The Senate will come to order. Members, please stand for the prayer. Today's chaplain is our very own Senator Andrew Matthews from Senate District 15. And following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good afternoon. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for giving us this opportunity to conduct the business of Minnesota in these challenging times. And I pray you'd give us wisdom for the tough decisions ahead. And I pray that you'd give us enthusiasm to rise up to the opportunities that these challenges present to us. You told us to praise you when the road is smooth and to praise you when the road is rocky. You told us to praise you when we're on the mountaintop and to praise you when we're in the valley. And I ask that you'd give us that enthusiasm and that joy to move forward in doing the best that we can for our communities and those around us. Again, I pray that you would be with our medical workers, our first responders, our folks that are on the front lines doing important work in serving people in difficult circumstances right now. We pray for your healing on those that are sick, and we thank you for what you will do in our country. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Secretary will take the roll.
Senators Abler, Anderson B., Anderson P., Bach, Benson, Bigham, Carlson, Chamberlain, Champion, Clausen, Cohen, Swazinski, Dames, Dibble, Draheim, Dietzick, Eaton, Eichhorn, Eakin, Franzen, Friends, Gazelka, Goggin, Hall, Herr, Hayden, Hoffman, Housley, Howe, Ingebrigtsen, Isaacson, Jasinski, Jensen, Johnson, Kent, Kiffmeyer, Klein, Coran, Lane, Lang, Latz, Limmer, Little, Marty, Matthews, Miller, Nelson, Newman, Newton, Pappas, Pratt, Rarick, Ralph, Rest, Rosen, Rude, Senjum, Simonson, Sparks, Tomasoni, Torres Ray, Utke, Weber, Westrom, Uyghur, Wickland.
A quorum is present. Members, we will operate today very similar to what we have the last couple times under the guidelines of the CDC and Minnesota Department of Health, and just ask that everyone please bear with us and be patient as we operate under these new circumstances, especially when we're voting, since we have to call to the other rooms or allow members to come in. So there will be a brief delay after each motion to make sure that every member has an opportunity to vote. With that said, we'll begin on the Senate agenda with the second order of business, executive and official communications. Please make note of the communications listed in the agenda. There's no further action required on those communications. The next order of business is the eighth order of business, introduction and first reading of Senate bills. Listed in today's introduction calendar are Senate files 4459 through 4462. These Senate files are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that Senate file number 4462 be laid on the table.
Senator Gazelka moves that Senate file 4462 be laid on the table. On that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Again, we will take a brief pause to get the votes of the members in the alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of votes, the motion prevails. Moving to the ninth order of business, motions and resolutions. There are a few authors' motions listed in the agenda. We'll take these authors' motions as one motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. We will again take a brief pause. Receiving a sufficient number of votes, the motion prevails. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the appointment withdrawn from the Committee on Jobs and Economic Growth, Finance, and Policy and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for August 14, 2020, be returned to the committee from which it was withdrawn, and this is for the Department of Labor and Industry Commissioner Nancy Lempink.
Discussion on the Pratt motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Again, we will take a brief pause. Receiving a sufficient number of votes, the motion prevails. Next, we have a resolution to be read by the Secretary.
Senator Gazelka introduces Senate Resolution Number 230, amending the temporary rules of the Senate.
Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Resolution Number 230 be adopted.
To the resolution, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, members, I asked Tom Bodden this morning to try to draft something that gave some flexibility under the new normal where we're moving back to every 3 days, recognizing that we're trying to work around the dynamics of social distancing and COVID-19. So this resolution amends the Senate rules to allow members who are voting from a remote location under the temporary rule that permits remote voting to be counted by the President for the purpose of establishing a quorum. If any member questions a quorum, the President must confirm that each member intending to vote remotely continues to do so. The President must announce the name of each member intending to vote remotely when declaring the presence of a quorum. The cross-reference of Rule 40.7 limits this changes to the duration of the peacetime emergency related to COVID-19.
Further discussion on the resolution, Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the effort that has gone into this resolution, and I think it is a good idea that we consider something like this. But as I spoke with Senator Gazelka earlier, I am concerned that we've not had a chance to really look at this and examine it. This came forward very literally at the last minute. And so I would recommend that we postpone this resolution to another time. Otherwise, I would encourage members to vote no until we have a chance to reconsider and make sure this is the direction we want to go.
Further discussion on the resolution. Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President, members, and Senator Kent. I do appreciate that it came up today, and I would respect a reason to vote no on this. I know that it's important that we have some flexibility in the process that we're moving through here. Same thing with committee hearings. We know that committee hearings should happen, and yet we're going to do them on Zoom and try to figure out how do we move language through the process. So members, I still recommend support of this language. It's just trying to create flexibility during the COVID-19 pandemic and the emergency powers that the governor has declared.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Senator Gazelka renews his motion for Senate Resolution number 230. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. We will pause to get the votes of the members in the alternate locations. For the members that are in the chamber, if you are an aye vote, please raise your hand. Okay, and if you are a no vote in the chamber, please raise your hand. A little longer, please raise those hands. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, members. You can please put your hands down. The motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions will revert to the third order of business.
Mr. President?
Senator Kent.
Thank you. Can we get is there a vote total that we can get on that, or is that not an option in this arrangement?
The vote count was 31-14.
Thank you.
Remaining under motions and resolutions will revert to the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following House file herewith transmitted, House File Number 4556, a bill for an act relating to state government, providing for COVID-19 policy and certain other policy changes. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
There's no action required on that message. The next order of business is the fourth order of business, first reading of House bills. The Secretary will read the House file number.
House File Number 4556.
House File 4556 is given its first reading. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to House File 4556, and that the rules of the Senate so far be suspended as to give House File 4556 its second and third reading and place it on final passage.
Senator Gazelka moves that a suspension of the rules for House File 4556. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion prevails. The Secretary will read the House file number for its second reading.
House File Number 4556.
Second reading. Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. House File Number 4556 is the fourth bill that we've put forward, and I'll say in a bipartisan way, to battle COVID-19. So far, we've spent more than $500 million that we've provided resources for the governor to make some of the key decisions to act quickly, to get more PPE, and to fight this battle. Today's bill includes some important technical issues that need to be dealt with as we continue with our response to the challenges of COVID-19. And so there's a number of senators that participate in this, and so I'll begin with Senator Benson and her key portion.
And members, just a reminder for those in the chamber and those in the alternate locations, if you would like to speak on the bill or offer an amendment, please let your room leader know, and or chief of staff and or the front desk, and we will make sure that you get added to the list. Next on the list is Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Starting with sections 11 and 12, providing coverage for COVID testing. This was part of the federal authority. They will be paying 100% of the coverage for uninsured persons who are symptomatic, who go in to get tested and are diagnosed for the period of the federal emergency. Section 13 gives the Commissioner of Health temporary emergency authority during the time of a peacetime emergency only. This was a request from the department so that they could redeploy staff for the purposes of focusing on COVID. This allows them to be flexible on some of their routine inspections, keeping in mind health and safety inspections must continue under this provision. The sections of statutes are called out here. Of note, specifically to the COVID crisis, is a lifting of the hospital construction moratorium and certification of nursing home beds for the period of the emergency, such that if temporary facilities need to be established, the department has the authority to then lift those restrictions and create licensed beds. It should be made clear that nothing in this would allow the department to compel an individual, for example, to be vaccinated as part of a COVID response. Continuing Section 14, do you remember in Section 13, we talked about MDH needing to establish temporary places for the purpose of the response? Well, Section 14 allows that medical assistants can pay for care in those facilities. So if someone is sick, needs to be transitioned out of a hospital into a temporary facility, medical assistants could in fact provide coverage in those licensed alternative health care facilities. Section 15 deals with telemedicine coverage during peacetime emergencies. Anecdotally, members, in the first weeks of this, I heard from one large hospital system in 48 hours they did more telemedicine points of service than they had done in the entire previous year. So telemedicine is helping us a great deal to meet people's needs while socially distancing. This applies during the declared emergency and expires following that emergency. And all of the provisions of telemedicine that are covered under medical assistance will be applied in the private sector, including mental health care and respiratory therapy. Section 16, let's see, I apologize, I've now stepped out. So let's skip ahead to Article 3 and Article 4. These were technical provisions that were moving through both bodies. Last year in the drafting of the bill, there were a few items that were missed, and this puts treatment for substance use disorder in line with what we actually passed last year, and makes an appropriation correction from last year's omnibus bill. And Article 14 is the February 2020 forecast adjustment for the fiscal years going forward. And with that, Mr. President, the Health and Human Services provisions are completed. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Next on that list, I have Senator Newman, followed by Senator Limmer. Senator Newman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The portion of the bill that I'm going to present has to do with the transportation aspects of the bill. I will tell you that the sections involving transportation are not long, and candidly, they are not difficult to understand. However, I will tell you that putting them together was somewhat difficult in view of the fact that we continually had a moving target. And by a moving target, what I mean is that circumstances changed when it came to vehicle titling, issuance of license tab fees, issuance of driver's licenses, and that was because directives that were coming from the federal government, particularly in view of CDLs, and from the governor regarding his executive orders and directives, in effect kept changing what we were looking at in terms of putting into the bill. Now, this is not a criticism on my part of Governor Walz, quite to the contrary. I believe that it is indicative of the fact that Governor Walz was listening to the legislature as we tried to address some of the problems that were involved in the transportation field. The working group that we were using within the Transportation Committee consisted of myself, Senator Dibble, Senator Yazinski. In the House, it was Chair Hornstein, Representative Tabke, Representative Torkelson, and it also included members from the executive branch, both from the governor's office and from the state agencies, Department of Public Safety, MnDOT, and the Met Council. I will tell you that we did have a working group hearing in which all of the members of the working group were present in a virtual hearing, and we also did our best to include the public in the hearing, and that is one of the frankly difficult parts of legislating under these circumstances, is because it is sometimes not easy to get the public involved. But in this case, we had the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, the Minnesota Valley Transit Group. We had the executive director of Move Minnesota, which is a transit organization. We had Chairman Zelli from the Met Council. We had Commissioner Anderson Kelleher from MnDOT, and we had Assistant Commissioner Tim Lanai that appeared with us in our working group. We also had submitted testimony from the Minnesota County Engineers Association, the League of Minnesota Cities, Minnesota Public Transit Association, Minnesota Deputy Registrars Association, City Engineers Association of Minnesota, and the Transportation Alliance. And I mention these specifically because I believe it is important, number one, to include the public and the state agencies as best we can as we move forward. I also want to indicate that, keeping in mind this legislative working group working with the governor and the executive branch is really illustrative of what we can, in fact, accomplish when we work together. And in the transportation arena, I want to express my appreciation to Governor Walz because on this particular portion of the bill, I sincerely believe that Governor Walz listened to us. Now, to the bill itself, for those who want to follow along on the actual bill, I begin at section 4, and that's on page 7, and then the transportation sections simply follow thereafter. The first section involves out-of-state driver's licenses and simply indicates that anybody that moves into the state of Minnesota and has a valid driver's license from a foreign jurisdiction can operate their motor vehicle in Minnesota for more than the current 30 days for a CDL, commercial driver's license, and more than 60 days for a non-CDL, and that it would not be necessary for them to renew their driver's licenses until within 60 days after the peacetime emergency ends. Section 5 deals with medical certificates and waivers, and for purposes of CDLs, if a medical certificate expires during the emergency declaration, that individual would have up to 60 days after the expiration of the peacetime emergency to renew their medical certificate. Section 6 talks about new commercial driver's licenses and indicates that if DPS is able to provide a procedure which will allow for on-the-road examinations during the peacetime examination, or peacetime declaration, I'm sorry, that under those circumstances, a CDL can be issued to new applicants without the need to provide a new photograph or apply for an eyesight test. Specifically, as to the eyesight test, I did check with the state troopers and was told by them that that can go in without objection. They are not concerned about it. But with respect to the photograph and the eyesight application, they would have to have their eyes checked and get a new photograph after the expiration of the peacetime emergency. Section 7 involves a report to the legislature by the Commissioner of Transportation and would require the Commissioner to, among other things, provide us with a report as to any statutes or administrative rules that were modified or waived during the peacetime emergency. Likewise, the Met Council would be required to provide a similar report to the legislature. This is a pair of reports that I believe to be specifically important because I think we should be aware of what laws currently in effect in the state of Minnesota were waived or modified by reason of the governor's executive orders. Section 9 involves the extension of the deadline for a financial report that the Met Council is required to present to us by October 15th, 2020. We've extended the time for that report to be sent to the legislature to February 15th, 2021. We specifically did that because we felt, given the COVID emergency, a report coming to us in February 2021 would have more meaningful information in it. The final section regarding transportation is Section 10, the use of federal transit funds. This is a provision that Senator Dibble brought forward and I think is totally appropriate. It is a permissive provision in the bill that, to the extent the federal funds that are coming to the state of Minnesota allow, the state of Minnesota will utilize those funds, and then it lists some of the things that they must use it for. For example, protective equipment for transit operators, cleaning materials, safety training, and frequent cleaning of the transit vehicles. The final portion of Section 10, again, involves a report. This is a report that would be required to come to the legislature from the Commissioner of Transportation and the Met Council, and must specify specifically what federal funds were spent, what they were spent on, and the reason that the expenditure was incurred. Mr. President, that is the transportation measures in the bill.
I have next Senator Limmer, followed by Senator Kiffmeyer. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. The provisions that we took up were 5 of them. The first one is regarding wills and harmless errors that might occur during this time due to the fact that in light of COVID-19 pandemic, many are writing and altering their wills at this time. In that particular rush, or perhaps without legal counsel, they're relying on programs that might be in computers or writing their own. This section provides that a writing or a document that does not meet one or more of the requirements for executing a will under law may be treated as if the writing had been executed properly if there is clear and convincing evidence that the decedent intended the document to constitute the will or a modification of the will. Now, it's important to realize that the clear and convincing evidence standard is the highest standard of evidence we require in any courtroom. It has to be in writing, it has to be signed by the testator or the decedent or another individual at their direction, and signed by 2 witnesses. The Minnesota State Bar Association brought this provision to us. And as Senator Newman said, some of these ideas look rather simple on paper, but once you start digging into them and understanding case law and existing law in light of this COVID-19 emergency, it becomes very difficult to make these temporary changes. Of course, during this provision is permanently applied to only those wills or documents executed between March 13th, 2020 and February 15th, 2021. The second provision is found in Article 1, Section 2. This involves deadlines governing proceedings in district and appellate courts suspended during peacetime emergency. We're basically talking of statute of limitations. And statute of limitations, if we did not change or recognize the impact of COVID-19, many of these statutes of limitation may expire without a person having their day in court. This particular provision suspends the running of statutory imposed deadlines governing proceedings in district and appellate courts. That begins March 13th and for 60 days following the end of the peacetime emergency. This provision was based upon consultation and advice from the Chief Justice as well as the Judicial Council. Article 1, Section 3 involves motions contesting child support cost of living adjustments. And it authorized child support obligor, the one who's responsible for making those payments, who received a notice of an intended cost of living adjustment, or a COLA as it's known, to file a motion contesting the COLA by June 30th. It provides an extended filing date up to October 31st if the obligor was unable to file a motion in a timely manner due to circumstances related to COVID-19. To put it in another way, due to the increase in the CPI over the last 2 years, that's what we base COLA adjustments on for those who are obligated to pay child support payments. In light of COVID-19, that may be very difficult. Actually, the COLA adjustment suggested for this later this spring was 4.7% increase. But in light of COVID-19, many people may not even have a job, or they've been laid off, or their hours have been dramatically reduced. Or for that matter, if you're filing as an obligor directly to the court without an attorney, you may not even have time in court right now. So for this purpose, these motions contesting child support of cost of living authorizes the obligor to present his case before a payment is made. Article 1, Section 4 regards public health emergencies, and in particular, marriage license applications and an oath without the appearance. Believe it or not, people still want to be married during COVID-19, and God bless them. But nevertheless, it does put a difficulty with our county administrators. County deputy registers are required to see these people in person under current law. This would authorize each local register to develop and implement procedures to examine parties upon oath and accept civil marriage license applications by mail, fax, electronic filing. An examination of the parties upon oath may include contemporaneous video or audio transmission or receipt of a verified statement signed by both parties. It provides an exemption from the requirement under current law that at least one party to the marriage appears in person. The Association of Minnesota Counties brought this for us to consider. They warned us that they were very concerned that if county administrative offices, and some of them have closed, would not have this opportunity to file marriage license certificates. Mr. President, we have one last provision, and thanks to Senator Dan Hall from Burnsville, he provided us a bill earlier this year, which was considered in the Judiciary Committee. It passed. It's on general orders, and that's regarding the use authorizes a coroner or a medical examiner to assess the criminal justice data communication system of the federal government to identify a deceased person. Basically what that means is a coroner or a medical examiner can take fingerprints. They're required to take fingerprints of a deceased person. If the identity of that person is unknown, they can file those fingerprints directly with the FBI and other institutions that hold those fingerprints in file in order to identify that individual. Currently, you have to, a coroner or a medical examiner in Minnesota would have to go to a recognized entity, in this case, the Department of Public Safety, and go to them in Minnesota's department, and then they in turn would file that request to the federal government. This is a process to streamline, and in light of COVID-19 that may affect homeless people that may not carry personal identification, it's vitally needed. The departments, certainly in the metropolitan area, the medical examiner associations and coroners are in support of this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll stand for any questions.
Next on the list is Senator Kiffmeyer, followed by Senator Weber. Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Appreciate being before you today. And in regards to this particular section of the bill, this have to do with the motor vehicle registration tax fees. We know them more commonly as the tab fees for our vehicles. The Office of the Legislative Auditor did an audit a couple years ago and found that there were serious inaccuracy concerns with the current system called MNLARS. That led to a great deal of searching as to what was the problem, and in regards to that, the Blue Ribbon Council was created, and their task was to review the current software called MNLARS. They did and decided that it was no longer worth continuing, and instead we should go out for new software. That was done, and the FAST company was then hired to complete the software work. As a part of that, the recognition that the current law was very complex, very convoluted, and was inadequate and unnecessary. And so a task force was created, which I chaired, which reviewed many options to make things simpler and give greater certainty and ease of processing. That task force recommended the manufacturer suggested retail price, MSRP. We went from complex to simple. What this means as we implement it, that the current owners will see no change in their tab fee depreciation, no change for the life of their vehicle. For new owners, the use of the manufacturer's retail price, the MSRP, will be for those who buy a new or used vehicle. The language of this bill makes sure that we are revenue neutral. So in regards to the amount of revenues under the old system and the new system, it is revenue neutral, even with the new use of the MSRP for all vehicles. This software is currently on schedule, on time, due to be implemented in November, December of this year. But in order to do the programming, they needed this legislation to be passed now. By doing so, the FAST company said they will not charge additional money for the programming for the IT. There would be, if we did this now. And DVS, in regards to the additional training because of this new process, they are also said no additional charge for that training if we did this now. So that is why you have it, members, before you today. Zero cost to implement, is revenue neutral. 100% of the money goes into the Road and Bridge account, Highway User Tax Distribution Fund. This is supported by the Deputy Registrars, Minnesota Association of Automobile, the DVS, MnDOT, and I want to give a special thank you to Senator Newman and all of the staff everywhere throughout state government that enabled us to have this legislation and its implementation today. With that, Mr. President, I ask for your support and your vote, members.
Next on the list, I have Senator Weber, followed by Senator Westrom. Senator Weber.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am here today to speak about the farmer-lender mediation extension. Farmer-lender mediation occurred in the 1980s with the farm crisis at that time. Right now, there's a difficulty in getting the hearings scheduled for people to attend as they're working out the teleconferencing and some of the many issues involved around that. Basically, what this change does is that it gives a 60-day extension to farmer-lender mediations. What this means is that originally there would be 90 days at the end of the determination whereby the lender could dispose of property that is extended to 150 days. And as far as any mediations that are currently in process or any mediations that begin the process before July 31st of 2020, they will have 60 days of additional time in order to meet the required time frames. With that, Mr. President, I appreciate the body's support for this change.
Next on the list, I have Senator Westrom, followed by Senator Marty.
Straight ahead of you, Tori.
Senator Westrom.
Thanks. Mr. President, one other provision in this bill deals with food for folks that are in need through the food shelf system. We also have producers that are having trouble finding sufficient markets for milk and meat products as restaurants and schools that have been shut down for several weeks now. It is starting to affect the food chain and the markets, and there's becoming more and more products and harder ability to process new livestock at the meat processing plants. And so one way to help out with those needs, both from the people needing that food and the farmers that are so amply fulfilling the food that we need in our state and our country, we need to help those in need, and we can take that surplus with this donation through the Second Harvest Heartland, which also works with all the food banks across the state, and the 6 in the state, the regional ones, will benefit from this as well. And so this $1.25 million was an agreement with the House and the Governor's office to help those in need during this pandemic and the emergency, and that might find themselves short of food, and we can also help with some of the supply problem that's depressing a lot of the ag markets right now. That's also in this bill.
Next on the list, I have Senator Marty, followed by Senator Abler. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate this good bipartisan bill. It's a lot of the things are fairly technical and basically giving flexibility to the agencies to do what they need to do to serve the healthcare community and help them deliver healthcare in terms of health and human services. And I appreciate that we are providing something the federal government's agreed to as well, and that is to make sure that people who are uninsured are covered for the testing and for the doctor visit for the testing for the COVID virus. It's very important. I want to point out that we're going to have to be back here again, and I hope in one of the future bills we'll be able to cover the treatment as well, because I think a healthcare system that cares about public health, a healthcare system that's trying to fight against a pandemic, doesn't want to say a certain percentage of the people, because they're uninsured, shouldn't be treated for the COVID virus. I think we want to make sure that not only are we testing them, but when people test positive, we cover them. It's not that they're not going to get any care whatsoever, because many of them will. I mean, the hospitals aren't going to turn away somebody who's got the COVID virus. They're just not going to be compensated for it. It's going to add up their debts and everything else. So I ask that next time we come back, we work to cover those who are uninsured, not only for the testing, but also for the necessary treatment to protect them and their health and the rest of us in our health as well. Thank you.
Next, I have Senator Abler, followed by Senator Jensen. Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, Mr. President and members and Governor Walz. I actually wrote my thoughts down so I'd get them straight. That's not customary for me, but I just have a few very important thoughts to share. I have the privilege of standing in this historic chamber to do my best to make a difference to the people who rely on me. It's an honor and actually it's a very high responsibility. And this is actually a very difficult speech to give. I have two important points to make. First, I'm critically concerned about what is happening to Main Street and the side street families and the livelihoods of those who are suddenly forbidden to work and can't even buy a boat or a truck. This is not a partisan debate, even though some would attempt to paint it so. A small number of DFL legislators have publicly or privately agreed with me. And as you know, there's great political pressure for members of any governor's party to quietly support the governor, even when they strongly disagree. This is how both parties function, unfortunately. And Governor, as you began your term, I told you I would work with you to help Minnesota. Please consider my comments as candid words from a friend. I suggest a new doctrine to guide the reopening of Minnesota: constrained optimization. Constrained optimization. Start reopening small and safe places and then go bigger, and begin today. Minnesota families are interested in the safety of their neighbors and their town. They're deeply frightened about COVID-19 for their elders, their families, and themselves. And it shows. They are good people. They care about Minnesota as much as you do. These are the locals who contribute to the middle school girls softball team, the ones who always give a door prize for the church bazaar, the Rotarians who always seek to help others, the people who make me proud to know them. They have been shocked about the dozens of executive orders that have been rained down on them over the past few weeks. They were stunned when their safe workplace was ordered locked. Had they been asked, if you just would have asked, given the gravity of the situation, they would have stayed home instead of needing the threat of a $1,000 fine and prison. Had they been asked, they would have made heroic efforts to make their small business very safe for their fellow townspeople. They would likely have come up with ideas nobody in government has thought of yet. Your own modeling shows us we are well ahead of earlier grave projections. We have flattened the curve and built capacity to cover healthcare needs of the emergency we are facing together. However, those gains could have happened without great personal expense for so many. There has been very much needless collateral damage inflicted on those who were already extremely low risk. My Main Street is dying. Its little mom and pop stores aren't powerful corporations. They can't pay their bills. My Anoka Chamber president tells me that time is running out for these businesses to even survive. In these executive orders, it seems like they're being cast off like chaff. Reopening Anoka's automated car wash will add no deaths. Reopening Anoka's Greenhaven unmanned golf course will endanger nobody. Allowing the local shoe and clothing stores to reopen is at least as safe as Walmart. There should be simple guidelines that they can follow, and they are poised to do that. No lives will be sacrificed to accomplish this, and I'm not willing to sacrifice any. Allowing these reopenings is consistent with epidemiologist Mike Osterholm's views that we have to find a way to resume some semblance of normalcy while COVID-19 is still around. I agree with him. My townspeople are going to continue social distancing even after the executive order expires. They will follow safe guidelines, and the vulnerable people will stay home. The next state budget forecast will predict a huge, devastating deficit. My personal estimate, at least $5 billion. If we stay, and I'm not kidding, that's what I really think. If we stay closed unnecessarily long, the deficit will be even greater. We're going to need these good Minnesotans to be part of the recovery and rebuilding. Please let them work. Constrained optimization. Start small and safe today. And Mr. President, my second point is, why are we here? Our legislative process is decidedly broken. The opaque method that brought this bill to the Senate floor is too common of a practice. It is not good for Minnesota. This also happened 2 weeks ago, last year, and in 2018. This dangerous pattern must be broken. And specific to this bill, it adds to the centralization of power. I have a lot of respect for Commissioner Malcolm, and she has worked very hard. However, we are awarding her the authority to suspend all or parts of 20 chapters without legislative approval. It is too much power for any one person. It is time to return to the separation of powers that has made Minnesota great for 160 years. A thoughtful, collaborative governor, an inclusive legislature, a transparent process that includes the people we represent. At the train crossing by my house, there are 2 red lights that flash when the train arrives. Governor Walz visited there last year. We know to stop when those lights flash. Hopefully my red light on the board today will warn Minnesota that we need to do better. Governor Walz, let's start today on constrained optimization. Colleagues, let's commit to a more open process. On both matters, Minnesota will be a winner. Thank you very much.
Next on the list is Senator Jensen, followed by Senator Dibble. Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Gazelka, for bringing this bill forward. Once again, we have a bill that has lots to it, and so there's a variety of pieces that I would want to speak to. I very much appreciate the attention, as Senator Marty referenced, to provide support for uninsured individuals in regards to COVID-19 testing and treatment. I think this is highly, highly admirable and important. I also very much appreciate what Senator Westrom is speaking to in regards to the food shelf support. I think this is critically important. We are already receiving information from around the state that food shelf supplies are starting to dwindle. So thank you, Senator Westrom, for bringing this up. There are some pieces in this bill that I would have loved to have seen that are not here, and I hope that we can address them in the future. Specifically, of the more than $500 million we've provided for support to the COVID-19 effort, less than 10% has gone to small business, and small business indeed needs our help. Property tax relief may well be something that we should be including in our next budget, in our next bill. And lastly, we have not met since last Friday on April 12th when Governor Walz executed an executive order to compel the state health department to give law enforcement agencies thousands of addresses to hundreds of locations with the addresses of people that have been diagnosed with COVID-19. For me, this is problematic on multiple counts. This is private health information. We did not do this with the HIV epidemic in the 1980s. The idea that we want to protect the first responders is admirable. I have served as medical director of emergency rooms. I have worked the emergency rooms around the state. I have done this for decades. And there's simply one mantra that we use when we go out on calls, and that's simply prepare for the worst, hope for the best. If we send addresses to 400 to 500 agencies and say, this is where you'll find COVID-19, eliminating the name does not provide the protection that's necessary. With this day and age of computers, you can plug that name to that address and find out if they're delinquent on property taxes in less than 60 seconds. When we do that, though, we potentially lull our first responders to a thought that this is a safe place. But by Governor Walz's own team, we know that for every confirmed case we have, we know there's at least 10 to 100 more that we haven't identified. So there can be no change in the way we approach first response to emergency medical situations. We must prepare for the worst and hope for the best. This is a violation of these people's rights. These people have not been asked if they can have their addresses sent all around the state. And if we think these are safe, we're kidding ourselves. Every week we read about hacking. Do we forget that last June, a court awarded $585,000 to a Minnesota citizen because her private data had been looked up more than 50 times by more than 50 members of the Minneapolis Police Department? Do we forget that the DNR has acknowledged that people within their organization have, for no other reason than simple interest, gone into those databases and done the same. This would be no different than if I was going to the hospital, and because I used my passwords and my access and decided to look up the health care of my neighbor because I was interested or intrigued if I wasn't her doctor. I can't do that, and if I did, I would be disciplined and potentially lose my license. We cannot do this. Governor Walz, we haven't had a chance to discuss this, and that's why I speak to you. Please rescind that order. It is not a good thing to do. You're stigmatizing neighborhoods. Is the next step going to be to ask them to put an X on their door and let all the neighborhood kids know that that household in that neighborhood has COVID-19 in it? That's not who we are. So, Senator Gazelka, thank you for bringing the bill forward. It has much to be commended for. And Senator Gazelka, we are called to be here and to meet. And if by meeting we somehow inadvertently contract COVID-19, so be it. We have courage, and you have the courage to call us here, and I would ask that you please keep calling us here. We need to be here to work alongside the governor. We need to be here because this is what the citizens of Minnesota elected us to do. With some misgivings about what this bill lacks, I will support the bill.
Next on the list is Senator Dibble, followed by Senator Hayden. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. Before I make the comments I came to make, I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to Senator Newman and all the work that we did together on fashioning the transportation portions of this bill. It was good work that we did, and there was a lot of give and take, and not everything I wanted included was in the bill, and not everything Senator Newman wanted included and others is in the bill, but we ended up with a good package of addressing what people are going to need during this peacetime emergency. And I also want to thank Senator Kiffmeyer for the piece on the element on dealing with vehicle registration, also very important, non-COVID related, but very time sensitive. Senator Kent was instrumental in making sure that that got included in the package, so thank you for that. I did want to thank both Senators Abler and Jensen for raising issues around balancing the interests of security and our personal freedoms and liberty. It's a very, very important balance that we have to strike. Security absolutely is important. Our personal freedoms that are guaranteed to us by virtue of being human beings, but especially being citizens of this country, are extremely important to be mindful of and protect. As a matter of fact, I was interviewed by public radio early on in the crisis about should we move to the next steps in this emergency and start asking people to isolate themselves, or what if we get to quarantines and the like. And the note that I sounded was we have to be very, very mindful of personal freedoms and civil liberties and the like. No one will ever question my commitment to that. Senator Abler reminded me this morning by email when calling attention to some of the emergency powers that we were granting to the Commissioner of Health, the battle that we had a number of years ago when there was an effort to greatly expand those powers to the agency, to the commissioner, in the event of a determination that a bioterrorism incident had occurred. And in fact, at that point, we thought the language went too far, and I partnered together with a number of folks on the very, very far side of the other side of the chamber to, in fact, slow that language of that bill down, and we went back to the drawing boards and we got some protections that are in the law in Chapter 144. And there was some question this morning about whether or not the emergency powers that we were codifying for the commissioner, in fact, threatened those quarantine, threatened the due process provisions, the civil liberties, the protections that we have for people should someone be subjected to a quarantine order. And so I did have the opportunity to do a little bit of research, or actually asked staff to do some research on my behalf, and they came back with the answer that no, that is not the effect of the language in this bill. In fact, the language of the bill speaks to limitations on those orders, confined to responding to the outbreak of COVID-19 for preserving access to programs and services provided, licensed or regulated by the Department of Health. And it's limited only to the kinds of administrative matters that the commissioner has the power to conduct. Quarantine is a judicial process, and so in fact, if in fact there is a motion or a movement to place an individual under quarantine, she would have to go to the courts and ask for an ex parte judgment and grant that power through the courts. And this also reaches into the arena of human rights, which of course isn't even under the jurisdiction of the Commissioner of Health. So I appreciate the vigilance, and I also will stand up in my commitment with both senators as well as anyone who's interested in civil rights, liberties, and protections to keep a very, very sharp eye out, because we absolutely have to be careful about that. You know, I come out of the HIV/AIDS movement in a time when there were ideas of wholesale quarantining of individuals, invasion of privacy. We didn't have HIPAA back then, and so people's privacy was violated all the time. People were fired for being HIV positive. They lost their housing. They were stigmatized and shunned and rejected by members of their community. Many people moved in to the big city from all around Minnesota because people had turned their backs on them in other places, even their families, and it was a terrible time. There was contact tracing that was conducted, but we made sure that was only done on a voluntary basis. These are very, very serious matters. But I don't want the public to believe at this point in time that somehow those protections that we built into the law at that time are somehow being defeated and overcome. They're not. And that's important to keep in mind, so that we're not creating concern on an unwarranted basis on the part of the public. We are trying to act responsibly. The commissioner is acting responsibly. I think the governor is acting very, very responsibly. I'm concerned about some of the denialism that's out there, somehow thinking that if we just let everyone run loose and we get herd immunity. That is a complete myth about what herd immunity even is and how it comes about. Herd immunity comes about through immunization by 95% or more of the population, not by going out and catching the disease. And let me just say one more thing in response to my good and learned friend, Senator Jensen. I don't feel like we need to think in terms of so be it if we catch COVID-19 should we come here. If I catch it, I may well give it to my siblings, 3 of whom are medically fragile, my 98-year-old father-in-law. I'm trying to stay away from all of them, but who knows, I might come in contact with them. It's not just about whether or not I get sick, it's about the effect I have on my family and members of my community. I think we need to keep that in mind. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the time.
Next on the list, I have Senator Hayden, followed by Senator Kiffmeyer. Senator Hayden.
Good. Well, thank you, Mr. President, and members of the body for bringing this bill. I am glad to stand here able to address the body and the rest of Minnesota. I just have a couple of comments on the bill, and I want to thank Senator Benson and Senator Marty and others that have been working on the healthcare side of the bill. I really appreciate the telemedicine portion of it, though I do want to just make a couple comments and would hope that in the parity of telemedicine, we recognize that it is an important tool for us to use not only in this time, but in the future, and that we would find not only parity in terms of how we use it, mental and behavioral health as long as physical health, but also the platforms that are being used, irregardless to if it is, you know, a PC, a Mac, an iPad, or even a smartphone, or even a regular phone in which people, a non-smartphone, that people can talk to their provider and tell them what the issues are, and making sure that the rates that are there, and that's not a conversation for today, but there's parity in the rates, as well as private insurance, Medicaid, and then also PMAP, which is a form of, is the way in which we work with our insurance providers through Medicaid. So there is, I think, some work to be done to ensure that there is parity in the payments. We think that this is a potential game changer, especially in low-income communities. Mr. President, I did just want to make a couple of comments, especially in light of Senator Abeler's passionate plea of opening up main streets throughout Minnesota, and I find it somewhat ironic. Senator Abeler knows this, that my mother-in-law lives in Anoka, in Senator Abeler's district, not far from Main Street, Anoka. And my mother-in-law, and she would tell you, and she's watching right now, we weren't able to spend Easter with my mother-in-law. My kids affectionately call her Mama, because my 18 and 23-year-old children, as long as myself and my wife, we all could potentially be carriers, and she is in a position in which she wouldn't do well if she got the disease. None of us would. But we especially think about my wife, who works each and every day running a treatment center with very vulnerable people. And though they have the protocols and things are seeming to go well, we don't want to make the chance. And then I'm in here today with all of you. And we interact with each other a lot, and we didn't want Mama to catch it. And then, of course, my very healthy 23 and 18-year-old children that I'm very proud of. Certainly listening to all of our physicians here, they could be asymptomatic, and so at Easter we didn't want to give Mama the disease, and so she lives 4 blocks from Main Street, Anoka. And so as we think about, and as the governor is walking through looking at the data and is working with the Department of Economic Development on how the trend will go and when we can start opening up businesses, and as businesses apply to open up and figure out what is the best way and what are the best practices, I want us to think about my mother-in-law, which we affectionately call Mama, to make sure that we're not putting her in a position, and her neighbors, and she's lived there most of her life, and her 90-year-old neighbor who she helps each and every day, and all of the others that are there, that we're not putting them in harm's way. And we're not putting them in a way that is going to affect them. And so though I can appreciate, and I've been on Main Street in Anoka many a days. I spend a lot of time out there if we're not bringing her groceries or spending time with her. So I appreciate the passionate plea, but I would hope that it doesn't come at the expense of Mama. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Next on the list is Senator Kiffmeyer, followed by Senator Herr. And members, if there are any amendments, please let the front desk know. We'll be going to third reading here shortly. But before we go to third reading, we want to give members the opportunities to offer any amendment that they might have. Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I'm rising to speak now to the overall situation which our Minnesota, our country, and our whole world is now engulfed in. Many times you kind of hear that it's one or the other. We either have public health or we have a healthy economy, and like they can't exist together. I would say that is incorrect. We have phases and stages of what we are going through. But I will contend we can do both. We can have public health, we can protect the health, especially of those who are vulnerable amongst us, absolutely. Every single business owner cares deeply. They all have parents, grandparents vulnerable around them. They care about them. But those folks also need to have a healthy economy to provide the services that they need, to have the hospitals open. So it is not a situation of choosing between an entity. It is a business. It is our fellow Minnesotans who have businesses that we all need, those grocery stores, and we can do both. We can do both and do them safely. My concern right now, when we have a total lockdown, is that everybody is inside, and there are many purposes and reasons for that at this stage. But my concern is unless we open the valve slowly and carefully, it is very, very important to do that judiciously, logically, and safely while protecting the vulnerable and the elderly. But this can be done. Our Minnesotans already have shown how adaptive they are, how caring they are. They have put them very much at the forefront of whatever they do. But for our public health, we need to open this up. Gradually, carefully open this up. There are people who have need of knee surgeries, hips, many other things, many other issues that they are currently being stopped. The cataract surgeries, there are just so many of them. These are people, and their public health, their personal health is at stake here too. And we need to address that and care about that. But we can do these things. We can do them safely. And it is safer to choose to do this on a careful, judicious approach with safe standards. And to mention, the stress that is going on right now, the stress itself is a public health risk. And we need to have a purposeful, methodical approach for the future. The numbers certainly show that. The testing and the other things that are coming out. But people need to have a hope. People perish without that hope. They need to see that. They need to see our leaders saying, yes, we can do this safely. We can have a plan. We can do this. I know Minnesota people. They care. They care deeply. We can protect our vulnerable, and we can work to get out and have a healthier economy. Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Next on the list, I have Senator Herr, followed by Senator Jensen. Senator Herr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Being the lead minority in ag policy, I'd like to express my appreciation, my thanks to Senator Weber and Senator Westrom for working very closely with myself and Senator Dietzitz and on the ag policy provision that was amended to this bill. And I'm hoping that other provision that I'm working on at the current time will have a little bit more flexibility like I have here with my other counterpart in the other caucus, because I believe in one Minnesota. Again, I do support the flexibility that we are offering in the agricultural sector through this bill, especially for the 90-day mediation and the farm to food shelf that will make food and fresh milk accessible to the people that are in need. As you know, agriculture and the transportation provision in this bill are low work at home environment. Low work at home meaning work more outside than inside. And those low work at home tend to be owned by low income, folks that live from one paycheck to another. So these type of jobs are considerably impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. And we need to be hasty in putting policy in place like what we did today. And I'm glad that we are doing so. But we need to go one more step further to develop a comprehensive set of strategy for other major low work at home sector, such as retail, food service, construction, warehousing, and micro business less than 5 employees. These types of job and small business too are hit hard by the COVID-19 economic crisis. And I'm counting on a few days from now that we will consider this low work at home that are heavily impacted by our peacetime emergency. So thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me time to express. Thank you very much.
Next on the list is Senator Jensen, followed by Senator Nelson. Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand here as a physician. I cannot let Senator Dibble's comments go unchecked. Herd immunity references the process whereby a group of persons that are not able to, or it's not a good thing to, acquire immunity to an infectious, contagious disease are spared by way of the rest of the population hitting a certain percentage of immunity, and that immunity can come from either vaccination or having the disease. That is why many of us would not have to have measles follow-up checks, because we were born before 1957. And the immunity that we have against measles was from getting the disease. And that's just an example. So when we talk about acquired immunity, we have to know that we're referencing both through vaccine or through having the disease, and herd immunity is when you hit a certain percentage that the belief is that those that are not able to acquire immunity for whatever reason would be protected. And in measles, it's 95%, and in mumps, it's 92%. And I think we need to be accurate when we use definitions like that on the Senate floor. Thank you.
Senator Nelson will be back shortly, so next on the list is Senator Ralph. Just a reminder, members, if there are any amendments, please let the front desk know. We are going to be doing third reading very soon. Senator Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll try and keep my comments brief. First of all, I echo everything that is being said about Main Street and the fact that right now our economy is in deep, serious trouble. I think we have to begin to look at a little bit down the road and see what's happening. Many of my constituents want to end the declaration of peacetime emergency. I think that sentiment is shared by many people. There's a great deal of concern as to why we are actually making the decisions we are making and the data that we are using to make policy that affects millions of Minnesotans. What I want to raise is the idea that has been referred to before, but in a little bit different light. And that is, we want to look at how we can stay safe, how we can prevent the spread of this disease, how we can prevent the vulnerable populations from being infected. Which means, I think, instead of looking at large cookie-cutter decisions in terms of groups of people, we need to look at individual situations. We need to look at the abilities of small businesses to act in a safe manner. They should be given the opportunity to step forward and say, here's my plan for operating safely. We need to be able to have a way for people who are in a specific category to say, I can be safe. And I want to kind of segue that into the comments that Dr. Jensen made, Senator Jensen made, about the fact that we need to be here as a legislature. We are the leaders of this state. As representatives in a republic, it is our job to give our constituents a forum in which to present their case, and then we are to act upon that using the values and reason and logic that we were elected to exercise. We can only do that when we meet as a legislature. I applaud the work that's being done here to try to make sure we can meet safely. I think we are achieving that, and I think it should be a demonstration to everyone, the governor, the state, and everyone, all of the agencies, that a legislative body of over 200 people can come together, safely transact business, and continue with the work that we need to do. I think we need to look at that. I think we need to look at how we can begin to relax what is happening with the many executive orders. In many cases, I believe that those were blunt instruments where we should have used surgical precision. And I think we can go and re-examine some of that and help and support the governor. And that, I want to see us support the governor, because I think everyone in this chamber and everyone in this state wants to see us come out of this thing successfully. And I think the only way that that can happen is we cooperate and work together. But I think we have to be willing to question some of the bases upon which we are making major policy, And I think we have to have the cooperation of the people that are providing that information to understand that we're not comfortable with it. So I think that in going forward, we need to do several things. Number one, definitely we need to put more money into or resources into our small businesses. But I think we also need to take a much longer look at how we are actually going to determine whether businesses are safe, whether people are acting safely, and whether we can slowly begin to move into a recovery of our economy. Part of this needs to be done by regions. I will say very candidly, the data from St. Cloud, my district, has shown that there are a total of 17 people that have been infected in the 3 counties that St. Cloud is in. 17. Now, there's quite a few people that live in that 3-county area that is my district. Something's working. And I'm not willing to say that a blanket shutdown is what is doing this. And I do think we need to re-examine what it is that is happening as to why in many of the even the population centers, as you look at the counties around the state and the data that we're seeing, it does not match up to what the models are supposedly saying. That gives me great concern. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion before we go to third reading? The Secretary will give House File 4556 its third reading.
House File Number 4556, a bill for an act relating to state government providing for COVID-19 policy.
Third reading. Members, any final discussion on the bill? Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just rise and I want to be brief for a lot of reasons that have been covered today. But this is good work. We are still working together well and have been able to put together some things that will ensure that Minnesotans can count on their state government and their local governments to continue to function and serve them even in these very difficult circumstances. We have heard stories from around Minnesota. I'm sure everyone is like me who's received emails from constituents and others who are wondering how they're going to deal with renewing licenses or getting a marriage license. I think that is something that we were able to do today that will make a difference. And these are typically in-person services because that's the way we've usually done things, but now we need for people to be able to continue functioning and living their lives under these unusual circumstances. I'm grateful that this legislation that we're passing includes some of these critical changes, such as the harmless error exception for wills, aligning our state statute with federal changes from the CARES Act that say that testing and diagnosis costs are covered by medical assistance for uninsured individuals, and the measures that have been taken to make sure that we are having the products of our farmers coming into the food banks, making sure that everybody is being cared for, works for everybody. And we've got a few measures in here that are really good for farmers who were having a tough time before anybody thought about the coronavirus. And I'm really glad we were able to make some of those steps today. There are a few things I think we've mentioned that are not in this bill that I think most of us wish we could get to a place, and I'm hopeful that we will still be able to work on them. There's some housing support that we need to take care of. Taking care of our schools and our school hourly workers is something we really ought to be doing. These folks are working hard for our kids. They're helping with childcare in our schools. They're helping provide meals, and they're helping support families and students through this distance learning curve that everyone is going through. And I want to point out another thing that Senator Herr has put forward, some micro business grants. We've got a lot of support out there for small businesses, but typically the smallest of businesses are the ones that face the biggest challenges. So I just want to encourage everyone to support this bill, and I appreciate the partnership throughout the House and the Senate in getting this to this point today. Thank you.
Any final discussion? Members were on final passage of House File 4556. See no further discussion. The Secretary will take the roll. Members, please vote at your own desk and then exit the chamber out the front door after you have voted. Members in the retiring room, please come into the chamber and vote at your own desk. And a reminder to all members, we do have other business on the agenda after we vote on this bill. Members in the East Gallery, please make your way to the chamber and vote at your own desk. Members in the President's office, please come into the chamber and vote at your own desk. Members in Capitol 206, Capitol Room 206, please make your way to the chamber and vote at your own desk. Members in Capitol Room 303, Capitol 303, please make your way to the chamber and vote at your own desk. Members in Capitol Room 237, please come to the chamber and vote at your desk, and then exit through the front door. Members in room 323, please make your way to the chamber, vote at your desk, and then exit through the front door. We'll now go to Senator Kent to call on the members who are voting remotely. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to report an aye for Senator Jim Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I'd like to report an aye for Senator Greg Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Carrie Dietzick.
Senator Dietzick votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Chris Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Melissa Franzen.
Senator Franzen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Jason Isaacson.
Senator Isaacson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Matt Klein.
Senator Klein votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Carolyn Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Ron Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Jerry Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Sandy Pappas.
Senator Pappas votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Ann Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Dan Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Melissa Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Bruce Anderson votes aye.
Senator Bruce Anderson votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Gary Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Dan Hall votes aye.
Senator Hall votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Karen Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Kerry Rude votes aye.
Senator Rude votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Dave Senjum votes aye.
Senator Senjum votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 64 ayes and 3 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Remaining under motions and resolutions, we'll take up the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has adopted the recommendation and report of the Conference Committee on House File Number 3100 and repassed said bill in accordance with the report of the committee, so adopted. House File Number 3100, a bill for an act relating to health care, establishing an emergency insulin program. House File Number 3100 is herewith transmitted to the Senate. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the foregoing recommendations and conference committee report on House File Number 3100 be now adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the conference committee.
To that motion, Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. I am going to keep this short because you've all had so much exposure to the bill. But before I start, I would like to say thank you to Senator Pratt for doing so much work for half of a year to get this bill prepped. And thank you, Senator Pratt, for allowing me the opportunity to step in and engage in some of the operational details. Thank you, Senator Benson, for providing the traction and the guidance for this bill to get done. And thank you, Senator Rosen, for being involved along the way and help keep steering this bill forward. And thank you, Senator Wickland, for your diligent efforts. I also want to thank Representative Mike Howard for his tireless work in regards to this effort, and I want to thank Representatives Liebling and Morrison and Albright and New. I also want to say that every good basketball team has a good sixth man, and for me on this bill, my sixth man was Senator Abler. He was always there encouraging me, even when I felt like we were running into an impasse. It would be Senator Abler that says, you can move through this, keep on doing it. So a huge thanks to Senator Abler. I also would want to say that I remember with a remarkable vividness last summer starting to meet in a small ad hoc group. And I appreciate the fact that there were people there on both sides of the aisle from both the House and the Senate. And I remember working with Representative Howard and Senator Little and Senator Pratt and Senator Benson and Senator Abler. So thank you, all of you. Basically, the conference committee bill has in front of it some changes. It moves the emergency copay from $75 to $35. It moves the long-term copay from $75 to $50. It removes the sunset date from the urgent need program. That program does not have a sunset. And it does sunset the long-term safety net program, but moves it back 1 year. It increases the administrative penalty for manufacturers' noncompliance. And thank you to Senator Benson. It allows low-cost biosimilars a pathway into the marketplace, and it exempts them from the programs. In addition, it requires manufacturers to provide hotline hours so long-term applications can be processed promptly. It also provides state and federal anti-kickback protection. In summary, this bill has an urgent piece with minimal eligibility requirements and an ongoing piece with eligibility requirements that have not been substantively adjusted since you last saw the bill. The bill provides for if you will, an ironclad operation whereby no one should fall through the cracks and find themselves desperate. If you are urgently in need of insulin and you have less than 7 days of insulin supply, with literally a 5-minute attestation and application form, you will receive 30 days of insulin. The long-term program application will be made to the manufacturers, and a response will come back in 10 days. If you find your application in the midst of an appeal, you are eligible for an additional 30 days. I think I've said enough, members. I just want to say thank you again. This bill is for Minnesota. This bill, if you will, received such a boost from the Senate when the Senate unanimously passed it to a conference committee. So I thank you, each and every one of you, and I stand for questions.
Discussion on the adoption of the conference committee report. Seeing none, Senator Jensen renews his motion to adopt the conference committee report on House File 3100. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. We'll take a brief pause to capture the votes from the alternate locations. Receiving the sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. The Secretary will give House File 3100 its third reading.
House File Number 3100, a bill for an act relating to health care establishing an emergency insulin program.
Third reading. Final discussion on the bill. Senator Little.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to open by saying it's about time. This bill took far too long to get here for no reason. What we're trying to accomplish is simple, which is to make sure that people that cannot afford their insulin can get it. I'm glad we're here today. I'm glad we're going to pass a bill today. This bill will save lives, and I encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to vote yes. But I can't skip today and not reflect on how long it took us to get here and why it took us so long. There were so many times that I thought today was not going to be possible. We were never going to pass anything. When we first started, we heard that coupons would help people, that the patient assistance programs were enough, and we were even told that it was Alec's own fault that he died. There was a bill that went through this body as an amendment that passed with overwhelming bipartisan support and then disappeared. It just disappeared. So today I'm glad that we have changed some hearts and minds on this issue, and that we've been able to get here today with a bill that will get to the governor's desk. I have a couple people and groups I'd like to speak to and thank. The first person is Alec. Alec, as you're watching us today, I'm sure you are as proud of your parents as I am. Your mom is relentless, and your dad has no ability to pull a punch. So I'm proud of them, and I know you are too. To Nicole and James, when we started this about 2 years ago, I had no concept of what it was like to be a dad or a parent. And now that I've got a 9-month-old, I think each day that goes by, I feel your pain more acutely. I'm so proud of you guys and all the time and effort you've put into this to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I also want to tell you, you only get this evening off because tomorrow we have more work to do, and I know you're ready for it. To every single insulin advocate or person that has advocated for themselves or their families or their friends that has spent time at the Capitol, that has put themselves in the spotlight even though they don't want to be, thank you. I can't go through all those names. There's so many of you that have sacrificed time at home and at work to be here to do this, and this doesn't happen without your efforts. I also want to thank my colleagues, and I want to point out 2 of them specifically. I know a lot of people have been involved in this bill. The first is Representative Howard. Representative Howard, I hope I am never on the opposite side of an issue as you. You've been tireless, and you've pushed this thing through the whole way for 2 years. And then in the Senate, I have to thank Senator Wickland. Your patience and perseverance are simply unmatched in the Senate, and your work without it, it wouldn't have been possible. The last group, Mr. President, that I'd like to talk to are somewhat nameless. I can't find them. When it's time to speak publicly about the issue, they don't. When there's a committee meeting where they could be heard, they could share their opinion, they don't show up. It's a group that seems to only exist behind closed doors. I don't know who these people are. So I want to say this. If you were hired to delay this bill, to weaken this bill, or defeat this bill, I hope the weight of your work rests heavy on your soul. Thank you, Mr. President.
Members, we're on final discussion for House File 3100. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to take a brief moment to thank Senator Jensen for bringing this bill over the finish line. There were a number of us that at the end of last session were, I think, disappointed at how the issue was resolved, and after working through it through the summer and then into the fall, I got to know this issue a whole lot better. And I'll tell you, one of the things that drove me on this issue was I met with a group in my district, and I had a diabetic look at me, and she said, "Senator, what you need to understand is that insulin to me is like air to everybody else." Insulin to her was like air to everybody else, and that stuck with me, Mr. President. And so there were a lot of us that worked on this. Senator Benson and her staff were absolutely awesome in helping to bring this to fruition. Senator Jensen, you did what many of us couldn't do, and that was to bring this to a closer, and you need to be highly commended for that. And so, Mr. President, I stand here proudly to be able to vote yes on this bill, to make sure that no additional Minnesotans die because of a lack of insulin and a lack of affordable insulin. So, and I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on this as well. Thank you.
Members, I have a list here. I have Senator Abler and then Senator Nelson, and we'll go to the author of the bill last or before the majority leader, if that's okay with the author of the bill. Senator Abler is making his way to the chamber. And then Senator Nelson will be on deck. Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President and members, and Governor Walz again, hi. This is actually an easier talk to have. What an amazing accomplishment. This has taken a ridiculous amount of time. And I wanted to thank Senator Little. He got this kind of going, and I want to encourage him. It's a time to celebrate. It's a time to be happy who came along. What I have learned in my short years here is nothing goes as fast as you hope, and some things take a little bit longer than that even. But what a great day to celebrate that this is finally accomplished. And I want to remind people watching that the 4 bills that were worked on in 2019, in the words of then Commissioner Lori, none of them worked. They didn't work. They had gaps. They just had gaps. They were not working. And so I made a list. I just don't want to screw it up. But so you take the recipe is you add a little bit of Little, you add a lot of Howard, add some Wickland, some Hamilton, some Pratt, Benson, Rosen, Jensen, and maybe me a little bit, and a whole bunch of other people whose names I forgot that are, well, you have these 2 tragic deaths that horrified us. And I met Jesse, and as he was lying there, and he was beautiful, and I just swore never again. But even that took a long time. Thinking a special session, remember we talked about that in September. But now what we have is a resolution. And particularly thanks to Senator Jensen, who navigated through some of the most torturous waters of all. And now we have a product that I believe will stand. And I don't think Farm is going to sue over it. If you do, you're going to have a lot of people really mad at you over that. Not to mention Senator Little, clearly, and me, and a whole bunch of the rest of us that are going to be like, anyway, it won't go well, so don't do that. So let this go. Let this be a national model about how people can work together from all parties, not just the Republican Democrat Party, but all the parties, and come together and solve something that has been unsolvable. And let's celebrate today that today we can tell people that no one in Minnesota will die for lack of insulin. And that is like something to celebrate and shout from the rooftops. It worked. People worked together. We got something done. And God bless all the people that can rest a little bit easier. Thank you, Mr. President.
Next, I have Senator Nelson and then Senator Jensen. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, stand in support of this bill. It has been a long time coming, but it is a critically important bill. Insulin is a matter of life. It's a life-saving drug. And like Minnesotans all across this state, I'm rejoicing that today we have an insulin bill that will ensure that every Minnesotan has access to affordable insulin, whether it be on an emergency basis or an ongoing basis. All the work that was done in previous years has been helpful in driving down the cost of insulin, and this bill will make sure that no one in Minnesota need go without life-saving insulin. I know there have been many people in both the House and the Senate, Republicans, Democrats, advocates, loved ones who've worked on this, and that's what it takes. It takes everyone setting aside their differences and focusing on what really matters. So I am celebrating with all Minnesotans today and with all diabetics and those who love them.
Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just make my concluding remarks by saying that I also would want to thank Alec Smith, as Senator Little has done. And I would want to thank Governor Walz for 3 or 4 weeks ago calling me over and asking how he could help to keep this bill moving forward. And the staff support has been remarkable. I think of a young lady named Bailey and how she stepped up to the plate, and I will always remember that fondly. I also would want to thank Cody Weiberg and Dr. Steve Schondelmeyer and all the folks I worked with on the Attorney General's task force as we kicked around ideas as well. And I appreciate Senator Little's comments, but I see the situation differently. I recall that the date of enactment for the legislation we considered last year was July 1st, 2020. And so this date of enactment is actually the day after enactment. So I may not have said that very well, but we basically have gotten a bill across the finish line that will take place quicker than if we would have passed a bill last session that was not ready for prime time. The difference between the various groups, it just wasn't able to be melded together. Senator Little and Representative Howard have both shared with me that they see value in the amalgamation of ideas that were emerging last session and came to fruition this session. So I thank them both for having brought an energy forward to allow us to truly merge the best ideas of both. We don't have a $38 million fiscal note with this bill. We have total costs of less than $1 million. And we have a bill that does exactly what we set out to do: provide eligibility, sustainable funding, and a mechanism of distribution of the insulin product that will work. And for that, I say thank you, and I say thank you to all my colleagues.
Final discussion on House File 3100, Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I'll just keep my comments brief. As it came to light that we had people falling through the cracks, I will say that the Senate listened, both Democrats and Republicans, and I promised that we would get this done. I thought it would be done sooner, but I just want to say it's a promise kept to people that deserve that promise to be kept.
Members, we are on final passage of House File 3100. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members, please vote at your own desk and exit the chamber through the front door. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber and vote at your own desk. Members in the East Gallery, please make your way down to the chamber. Members in the President's office, please come to the chamber and vote at your desk and exit through the front door. Members in Capitol Room 206. 206, please come to the chamber and vote at your desk. Members in Capitol Room 303, please make your way to the chamber. Capitol 303. Vote at your desk and exit through the front doors of the chamber. Members in Capitol 237. 237, please come to the chamber, vote at your desk. And members in room 323, please make your way down to the chamber. Room 323, vote at your desk and exit through the front of the chamber. I will now call on the majority and minority leaders to relay the votes of the members who are voting remotely. We'll start with Senator Kent. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report an aye for Senator Jim Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Greg Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Carrie Dietzick.
Senator Dietzick votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Chris Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Melissa Franzen.
Senator Franzen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Jason Isaacson.
Senator Isaacson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Matt Klein.
Senator Klein votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Carolyn Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Ron Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Jerry Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Sandy Pappas.
Senator Pappas votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Ann Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Dan Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report an aye for Senator Melissa Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Bruce Anderson votes yes.
Senator Anderson B. votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Gary Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Dan Hall votes aye.
Senator Hall votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Karen Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Kerry Rude votes aye.
Senator Rude votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Dave Senjum votes aye.
Senator Senjum votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next order of business is the 13th order of business, announcements of Senate interest. Are there any announcements of Senate interest? Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may ask Senator Gazelka to yield, please.
Senator Gazelka will yield. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Gazelka, it is my understanding that we are going to come back in on Friday at 11 o'clock. Is that correct?
Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, Senator Kent, it's going to be Thursday. We're going to go back to the normal every 3-day Monday, Thursday routine. I don't know the exact time. I'll have to look at the card.
Okay, thank you.
I believe it's 11 a.m. Senator Kent.
Thank you. I had heard both Thursday or Friday, so I wasn't sure. And can you give us a sense of what we're going to be doing when we come back in?
Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, Senator Kent, I was going to talk about this in my closing comments, but there's a number of things that we will need to address or have the possibility of addressing that as we get more information, we can move them forward. Broadband is an issue that we're waiting to see what are the numbers, what are we going to do about the state budget, money for Mayo and the University of Minnesota for testing is an issue that we have to address. Liquor exceptions, for example, restaurants, I think we have agreement now that if they do takeout, they can serve alcohol. I've heard that craft breweries like Castle Danger are looking for some exceptions. So as we're working through these days, we'll take up some of the things that are ready that we can agree on and keep moving forward.
Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Gazelka, I appreciate that these are all very important. We've all been working on them and trying to get them through, and I hope they will be ready. But as we have all discussed, we need to be mindful when we call everybody back together. I remember Senator Ralph earlier referred to the 201 of us coming together, which is in and of itself an issue. But the issue is really that it's when we go back apart and we go back into our communities and we go back into our families and we go back to our vulnerable neighbors. And so I just encourage all of us to be thoughtful and take very seriously that when we come together, we need to be organized, we need to be respectful and responsible with each other and with our greater communities that we all represent, and make sure that we have meaningful work that we can do at that time on behalf of the people of Minnesota, because This is a very difficult time, and people are concerned. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we don't further spread this disease. Thank you.
Any further announcements of Senate interest? Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members and Senator Kent, point well taken. I think the safety of everyone here, as well as what we're doing out and about, is very, very important. I would say I think it's time for the Minnesota Senate to get back to work as normal, but frankly, it's a new normal. And I think as you look at what people have done around the state, our habits have changed. I haven't shaken somebody's hand since Roger Chamberlain probably 3 weeks ago. I haven't given a hug to anybody but my family since Scott Jensen a few weeks ago. That was it. And so when I touch an elevator button, I use my elbow, or when I'm opening a door with a wall that you can push the button, I use my foot. And I see that everywhere. When I'm going into a building, I grab a sanitizing cloth because I'm cleaning things up as we go. But I'm not the only one. I see everybody working on those things to be safe and to carry on. And so I think coming back to our normal constitutional schedule where we meet every 3 days is important. We have a little less than a month to go to work on some of the things that Minnesotans want us to work on. One of them is COVID-19, but there's a myriad of other issues that may come up. I think it's critical that we focus on how do we get the livelihood of Minnesotans back on track? How do we jumpstart that? That is absolutely critical. And then as we set our eyes to the next year, what are we doing right now to tighten the belt of state government, because we already know that we're going to have a significant budget deficit. So we're going to lead by example, members, and as we do that, just think about what we are doing and how we're setting that example and why we're setting that example. One of those things is I go to Walmart or Target to get groceries or Cub Foods. I go to the gas station. I bought a bottle of wine. We've got all these different people out there that we're expecting to take care of things that are considered essential. And folks, we are essential, and what we're doing is essential. And so I'm saying it's time to get back to work, but frankly, we have to do it differently. And so I took a look through what are the things that we're doing to make our workplace safe, because this is what each industry needs to be thinking about. How do we make our workplace safe? Today is the third time we've come together using social distancing. I only saw 1 or 2 people that got within 6 feet for a little bit, and I just said, 6 feet, 6 feet. You know, just reminding people, but as a rule, we're naturally now doing that. We limited access to Senate office suites and staff areas to the public. It's only by appointment now and only 2 at a time. Our building staff modified their cleaning processes, and we have hand sanitizer and sanitary wipes all over the place. Our employees have been working remotely, and many will continue to do so. Our committees are taking full advantage of Zoom to hold safe, interactive online meetings. And these are going to ramp up now through the weeks of April into May. We've advised older senators and employees and anyone with underlying medical conditions to stay at home and stay safe. Now, some will choose to come in, and that is their right, but we're encouraging people to stay safe. And we're following the other CDC and MDH guidelines on hand washing and social distancing. So we can operate the Senate in a safe manner and do our work, and that's the same thing that I see as the process moving forward in Minnesota. What can businesses do to open up? If they can show that they can do safe distancing and follow plans to have a cleaner environment, then it's time to let them get back to work. And folks, if I go to Walmart, it's like a parking lot full of people. Why would I go? Why could I not go to a small mom and pop store with 4 or 5 workers and 5 people in there? To me, that seems even safer than going to a Walmart. But all of these steps that we're taking are not going to stop the virus. I cannot guarantee that somebody in our Senate family will not get COVID-19. The governor even talks about the fact that a lot of people are going to get infected with COVID-19, and we're simply slowing the process so the peak is a little later. But the fact that that is a real risk that we have to accept should not alarm people. It's part of what we're all going through together. But we're going to do the work of the people. So what is our top priority? COVID-19. And we're going to make sure that we're here to respond immediately to the things that the governor is asking for, and then focus on what do we need to do for small businesses, and finally the state budget. Those are our main things, and the other things that we'll address, we'll take them as they come. We're going to work together. The bipartisan cooperation is very, very important. I see it everywhere, and especially in the Senate. So thank you, members. With that, Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until Thursday, April 16th at 11 a.m.
Senator Gazelka moves that the Senate do now adjourn until Thursday, April 16th, 2020 at 11 a.m. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. The Senate is adjourned.